Alright, I've got the bracket for the wires welded on. I probably could have made this metal plate a bit longer, but it'll do. And my nozzle pipe is welded on there, so now what I need to do is drill the holes to hold the welders onto the cart. Now for the welder at the bottom, I decided to move it a bit further. I'm not going to build a cart over here to hold some things, so I had to remeasure. It's actually 3 inches from the front on each side here, and I'm just going to mark the holes again on all 4 corners. And there's a hole over here and one at the other end. Now I'm just going to mark my holes with a starter punch. What I'm using to drill the holes is a 532 drill bit, and that's the size you need if you're going to tap in some 1032 threads. I'm going to put these little screws here. They're 1032, and they're going to be holding the arc welder onto the cart. Alright, I'm ready to tap the holes, and this is the tap I'm using. It's a 1032. So the metal's pretty thin. It won't take much to get through there. Okay, so I'm done all 4 holes. So now I'm just going to try out the screw and the threads, and it's working good. So now I've got all the 4 holes done and tapped. Now I just got to do the holes for the top, and on the top here I'm only making 2 holes. It's a bit harder to secure the MIG to the platform here. So I'm going to drill out a hole that I marked out earlier, and this one over here. And for these holes I'm using a 1/4 inch drill bit. Alright, I think I'm pretty well done the cart for now. I brought it outside just to double check all the welds and did a bit more grinding to make them smooth. And I can't see anything else that I should do to this cart before I paint it. So I think at this point the next thing to do is to wash the cart with methyl hydrate. I'm using it to clean off any oil or grease that is on the cart. The methyl hydrate does dry pretty quick. And after that I'll take off the 2 back wheels, hang it up on my ceiling, and give it a shot of primer. So here's what I'm using, methyl hydrate. I'm going to put some on a nice white rag just so we can see how much dirt is coming off. Be very careful around open flames or sparks with this stuff. It is extremely flammable, so be cautious. So here's the dirt that came off just the top. Now I'm just going to do the whole rest of the cart. So here's all the crud that got on the rag, so it's definitely worth cleaning it off before you paint it. So after I've removed the wheels on the back, the next step is to paint it. Alright guys, I've got my cart hanging from the ceiling. I've got all the wheels off, including the casters. That is actually screwed into a beam inside my ceiling, and it's just a small rod that's holding it. And like I said, I took the wheels off, and now it's ready to go. I covered my table over there. You may want to cover your floor if you're afraid you're going to get drips, but I'm using a spray can today, so I should not have any drips at all. So what I'm going to do is spray paint it with some trim clad primer, and let it dry for 24 hours. Then tomorrow I'm going to come back with a spray can of black paint and do the final coats. Here's the paint I'm using. It's the Trim Clad Professional. I prefer the Professional one over the regular paint. So this is a flat red primer. It is an oil-based product. And now I'm just going to spray it on. If you're doing this inside your garage, make sure you've got good ventilation. And you also may want to wear some kind of mask. Okay guys, I'm done priming my cart for today. Now at this point you want to make sure there's no runs on your paint. If you see any, it's time to get them off. And make sure you keep enough heat in your shop overnight for this to dry properly. Alright guys, I'll see you back tomorrow when I do the final coat, which will be a black gloss paint. So it's the next day and the primer on my cart is really dry now. So now what I'll do is I'll spray the black paint on there. And this is the paint I'll be using. It's the same paint as the primer, except it's gloss black and it's an oil-based product. So what I'm going to do is put about 2-3 coats on here. I'm going to spray the paint, let it dry a few minutes. When it's a bit dry to the touch or tacky, I'm going to respray it again and then let it dry for a good day before I put the wheels back on. You want to spray on thin coats because if you go too thick, it's going to run. So I've got the first coat on. I'm going to let it dry a couple minutes till it's tacky and then do the second coat. So at this stage, this is my second coat on the cart and I've used up the whole can of paint. I'm going to have to crack open a second can. Basically, I've been using half a can for each coat I've been putting on this cart. So again, I'm going to let it dry till it's tacky and put a third coat on. You don't have to go with 3 coats, but I just want to make sure I hit every spot perfectly. So here's my third and final coat. I'm going to let this dry for a good 24 hours before I put the wheels back on. I want to make sure that the paint's nice and dry before I start grabbing it. I don't want any soft paint to leave smudges or anything like that. I had a little run over here and I wiped it, so it's probably going to show once it's dry. Now I've got my garage door shut, I've got the heat on. I'm going to let this dry real good. Alright, the paint's all dry now and I've got some of the wheels back on. And what I did for the rear wheels is I put a small washer near the cart, then a bit of grease on the shaft. Then I just installed the wheel on, put another washer, and a cotter pin goes right in the hole here that I drilled previously. And now I'm ready to put the welders back on. And the first welder I'll be putting on today is the Mig Welder, which is this welder over here. So here's the welder on the cart. What I did is I put a bolt in the hole over here underneath the spool of wire. I've actually put a bigger spool since the last video. And you can see the bolt underneath there, it goes right through. And there's a lock nut underneath. I didn't go too crazy for tightening it, I just tightened it up till it's snug. And there's only one more bolt holding it, and it's right underneath the plastic foot over here. Here you can see the bolt underneath. And there's actually a nut inside the foot over here. There's little grooves inside the plastic feet so you can insert a nut. So that's going to hold one bolt here and one at the other end. Just put your bolts in a cross pattern and 2 bolts will be sufficient to hold this welder on here. It's fairly heavy as well, so with the weight and the 2 bolts it's not going to go anywhere. And I've got the gas cylinder mounted as well. And to do this I used the knob and the carriage bolt that I had set up previously on the strap there. And now it's time for the 225 AC stick welder to go in the bottom. Previously in the video you saw me making 4 holes on the frame of the cart. Well, this is to put some small 3/8 1032 screws. And the holes are threaded to take on these small screws here. They're just little machine screws, and again they're size 1032. So I've got the front screws on, and there were also 2 other holes in the back of the machine as well to put extra screws back there if you think you need to. So at this point the bottom one's mounted nice and securely, and I've got all the wires wrapped around that bracket on the side. What I would do differently next time is make this bracket much wider, because as you can see the wires are coming out. So if you do decide to make a cart like this, you could make this bracket much longer here so your wires don't come off. Anyways, I'm quite happy with it. Now that I look at the card, I can see that going with a 2-inch square tubing was not overkill. I'm actually glad I went with the bigger square tubing instead of going with a 1-inch square tubing. There's actually a lot of weight on this unit now when you pull it, especially with the bottom welder on. And this card's going to save a lot of space in the shop as well. Now to make a nice finishing touch to the card, I bought some Lincoln Electric stickers here. I'm not going to use all of them, but I'm going to start by using these ones over here. And I'm going to put one on this side over here. Make sure that your metal is nice and warm and the stickers as well, because you want them to adhere properly. And I'll do the same on the other side. And I put one at the back over here. And I added a large one to the side of the stick welder here. And also a small one at the top on the other side. It's going to add some nice finishing touches, and people might even think you bought it. And probably a lot of you guys are wondering what was the cost for the complete cart build. Well, it was approximately $125. That includes all the welding consumables, the gas in the tank at the back of the welder, some welding rods, the solid wire for the MIG welding, a flap disc, paint, all that stuff, the electricity you're going to use in your garage to build it. So I think that's a pretty good price, and it's custom built, so it fits your needs. And most importantly is you get the satisfaction that you built it yourself. So guys, thanks for watching. I look forward to your comments, and always remember to be safe when you're welding, and we'll see you next time.